The rain had been falling since dawn, the kind that soaked through clothes and settled into the bones, heavy and unforgiving. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, slick with water, reflecting grey clouds that looked ready to collapse onto the earth. Malik had driven this route for 15 years, hauling goods from one city to another, his life measured in miles and deadlines. He was used to loneliness, used to storms, used to seeing people at their worst from behind the wheel of his truck. But that morning, something made his foot ease off the accelerator. On the side of the road, barely visible through the curtain of rain, was a family walking. A man with a worn jacket held the hand of a little girl, while a woman carried a baby, wrapped in a thin blanket already soaked through. They walked with their heads down, shoes heavy with water, each step slower than the last. Malik told himself to keep going. He had a delivery to make. Stopping on highways was dangerous. He'd seen too much to be reckless. But as he passed them, the little girl looked up. Her face wasn't crying. It was worse. It was empty, exhausted beyond tears. Malik's chest tightened. He drove another 100 meters before the image refused to leave his mind. He pulled over. When Malik stepped out, the rain hit him hard, cold and sharp. The man stiffened, instinctively stepping in front of his family. Malik raised his hands calmly and spoke over the rain.
"You all right?"
The man hesitated, then shook his head. They had been walking for hours. Their car had broken down miles back. No money for a tow, no phone battery, no shelter nearby. The baby whimpered weakly, and the woman turned her face away. Embarrassed by tears, she could no longer hide. Malik looked at the sky, then at his truck. He thought about his schedule, his boss, the penalty for being late. Then he thought about his own childhood, nights when his mother prayed someone would help them. He opened the truck door. "Get in, all of you." The man's eyes widened. "Sir, we don't want trouble." Malik shook his head. "You're not trouble. You're human." Inside the truck, the heater blasted warmth like a miracle. The children's shaking slowly eased. Malik handed them bottled water and the food he'd packed for himself. The little girl clutched the sandwich like it might disappear. As the rain drummed against the windshield, Malik listened to their story. The man, Yusuf, had lost his job weeks earlier. They were moving to another city where a cousin promised work. Everything they owned was in that broken car. Malik felt something shift inside him, something heavier than pity. This wasn't just bad luck. This was the edge where lives fell apart quietly. As they drove, Malik noticed the little girl watching him through the mirror. Curiosity replacing fear. He smiled at her, and for the first time that day, she smiled back. Hours later, Malik dropped them at a small roadside shelter and promised to return. He watched them walk inside, safe, for the night. As he drove away, his heart felt strangely full and painfully heavy at the same time. He didn't know it yet, but that stop in the rain had already changed something deep within him. And as you listen to this story, remember, sometimes the smallest decisions become the moments that define us. If stories like this move you, stay with this channel. Subscribe, because the next chapter reveals just how powerful one act of kindness can truly become. Malik didn't sleep that night. The image of the family followed him, replaying every time he closed his eyes. At dawn, he made a decision that terrified him more than any storm he'd driven through. He called his boss and told him he'd be late, maybe much later. Then he turned the truck around. When Malik returned to the shelter, Yusuf looked shocked. "You came back," he said quietly, like he'd been afraid to hope. Malik nodded and told them to gather their things. He drove them back to the broken car, helped Yusuf push it off the road, then made calls using his own contacts. A mechanic friend agreed to help. While they waited, Malik bought warm clothes for the children and proper food. The mother held back tears, whispering blessings over and over. Malik felt uncomfortable with the gratitude. "I'm just doing what someone once did for me," he said, though he realized no one ever truly had. Maybe this was the moment he'd waited for without knowing it. Days passed. Malik stayed. He helped Yusuf get the car running, then helped him reach his cousin. He introduced Yusuf to people he knew, warehouse managers, small business owners. One opportunity became another. Weeks later, Yusuf had steady work. Months later, they had an apartment. Malik visited when he could, watching the children grow stronger, louder, happier. The little girl, Amina, ran to him every time he arrived, calling him Uncle Truck. One evening, as Malik prepared to leave again, Yusuf handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter and a small photo of their family smiling under clear skies. The letter said what? Words often fail to capture that. Malik's decision in the rain didn't just help them survive, it gave them a future. Years later, Malik drove that same highway during another storm. The rain still fell, the road still stretched endlessly, but Malik was no longer just a man delivering cargo. He was someone who knew the weight of stopping. Somewhere out there, lives were waiting at the edge of hope, just like Yusuf's family once had. Malik smiled as he drove, knowing kindness doesn't end when the moment passes. It echoes forward, changing lives in ways we may never fully see. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that humanity still exists, even in the harshest storms, then subscribe to this channel, because every story shared here carries the same truth. One choice, one moment, one act of kindness can change everything. The rain had stopped, but its memory stayed behind, hanging in the cold air like a quiet warning. Malik drove all night, but sleep never came. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the family walking in the rain, the little girl's tired face, the baby shivering in his mother's arms. By sunrise, Malik made a choice that would change everything. He turned his truck around. When he reached the shelter again, Yusuf stood frozen in the doorway, disbelief written all over his face. "You came back," he whispered. Malik nodded. "I said I would." That moment alone gave the family something they hadn't felt in weeks: hope.